Every American breaks eggs into a pan almost every morning without a second thought. But in the last 15 years, 7 separate producers behind dozens of familiar cartons have been linked to salmonella outbreaks that sickened thousands, hospitalized hundreds, and in one case, sent the company's own owner to federal prison. The eggs looked normal, they smelled normal, and they were sitting on the same shelves as everything else. Today we're counting down the 7 names the FDA, the CDC, and federal court records have tied to America's worst egg contamination cases. And the hidden supply chain trick that means you could be buying the same bad eggs under 10 different labels without ever knowing it. Here's the part most people don't realize. When you pick a carton at the grocery store, you assume you're choosing between competing companies. In reality, a shockingly small number of mega producers supply eggs to dozens of store brands at once. One contaminated farm can end up on shelves under names that look nothing alike. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's documented, government-confirmed fact, verified through FDA recall filings and CDC outbreak investigations. And it's exactly why this list matters more than most people think. Let's start the countdown. Number 7 is Country Eggs, LLC, based in California. In August 2025, health officials traced a salmonella outbreak to this company's large brown cage-free eggs, marketed under names like Sunshine Yolks and Omega-3 Golden Yolks. Here's the twist. The same contaminated batch was sold under for completely different retail names, Country Eggs. Nagatoshi Produce, Misuho, and Nijiya Markets. 4 brands, 1 source. Shoppers in California and Nevada had no way of knowing they were buying from the same supplier. But that's only the beginning. Number 6 takes us to Bondul, Wisconsin, and a company called Milo's Poultry Farms. In 2024, federal investigators used whole genome sequencing, a DNA-level fingerprinting technique, to match salmonella found inside Milo's own packing facility to the exact strain making people sick. 93 confirmed illnesses, 34 hospitalizations. Wisconsin alone accounted for 60 of those cases. And here's the detail that should concern you. Milo's eggs weren't just sold under their own name. They also supplied Tony's Fresh Market and even a duck egg line called Happy Quackers Farm. What happened next surprised investigators too. The bacteria wasn't just in the eggs. It was living inside the poultry house itself, meaning it could keep contaminating new batches indefinitely until the source was found. Number 5 is bigger and older, but the pattern is identical. In April 2018, Acre Farms of Seymour, Indiana recalled 106,749,248 eggs. That's not a typo. 100 million eggs from one North Carolina farm. The contamination, Salmonella branderup, eventually sickened 35 people across 9 states and sent 11 to the hospital. Now here's where it gets genuinely unsettling. Those eggs were sold under at least 10 different names: Coburn Farms, Country Daybreak, Crystal Farms, Food Lion, Glenview, Great Value, Nelms, Sunshine Farms, Publix, and Sunups. 10 brands. 1 farm. Even Cal-Maine Foods, the largest egg producer in the entire United States, had purchased eggs from Rose Acre and was forced into its own recall. If the biggest player in the industry wasn't immune, ask yourself how confident you really should be reading a label. Stay with me, because the biggest revelation is still ahead. We're only halfway through, and the next 2 cases involve household names you almost certainly have in your refrigerator right now. Number 4 brings us to August Egg Company of Hilmer, California. In June 2025, this single facility recalled 1.7 million dozen eggs, roughly 20 million individual eggs, after 79 people across 9 states got sick and 21 were hospitalized. Investigators confirmed salmonella entered this contamination tied directly to the farm. But the real shock is the label list. These eggs were sold as Clover, First Street, New Laid, O Organics, Market Side, Rallies, Simple Truth, Sun Harvest, and Sunnyside. 9 separate consumer brands, spanning organic, budget, and premium tiers, all traced to one contaminated source. If you've ever paid extra for an organic or premium label assuming it meant safer sourcing, This case is proof that pricing tier tells you nothing about which farm your eggs actually came from. Number 3 takes us back to the outbreak that changed everything, 2010. In a company called Hillendale Farms, Hillendale wasn't operating in isolation. It was receiving hens and feed from a hatchery tied to another producer we're about to meet at number 1. Together, their contaminated supply chains triggered one of the largest coordinated recalls in American food history. Hillendale alone pulled millions of eggs from Ohio-based farms after Salmonella enteritis was confirmed inside its laying houses. But what happened next surprised even federal regulators. Because Hillendale wasn't the primary source, it was collateral damage from a much larger, much darker operation. Before we get to that operation, let's talk about number 2, because this one is happening right now, in 2026. Midwest Poultry Services, based in North Manchester, Indiana, operated to farms in Texas that the FDA has already upgraded to a Class I recall. Its highest possible risk designation, 1,589,577 dozen eggs. That's over 19 million individual eggs, recalled in July 2026 alone. 98 confirmed illnesses across 17 states. 26 hospitalizations. And the brand names on those cartons: Kroger, Simple Truth, Brookshire's, Country Morning, Sunups. Some of the most trusted names in American grocery stores, all sourced from Texas farms the company itself later admitted had identified contamination through its own environmental monitoring. The real reason this keeps happening isn't bad luck. It's structural. A handful of massive suppliers feed an enormous share of the entire national egg market, which means one failure doesn't stay contained. It multiplies across every brand that farm supplies. And now, number 1. The case that changed federal food safety law forever. Wright County Egg, owned by a man named Jack Decaster, operated laying facilities in Iowa that, combined with Hillendale Farms, triggered the recall of more than 550 million eggs in 2010, the largest egg recall in United States history. Confirmed lab-tested illnesses reached nearly 2,000, but CDC modeling estimated the true number of people sickened may have climbed as high as 56,000 nationwide. Investigators found the strain of Salmonella had likely been circulating inside Decaster's facilities for years, before the outbreak was even detected. This wasn't Decaster's first controversy. Congressional investigators had documented decades of prior labor violations, environmental citations, and animal welfare complaints tied to his operations before the outbreak ever made headlines. In a rare move for the food industry, Jack Decaster and his son Peter pled guilty in federal court in 2014. 2 charges connected to the outbreak. They were sentenced to 3 months in prison in order to pay a combined $7 million in fines, becoming one of the only instances in American history where food company executives faced actual jail time for a contamination case. The largest recall, the widest illness estimate, the only criminal conviction. That's why Wright County Egg sits at number 1. So what does all of this actually mean for the carton sitting in your fridge right now? It means brand loyalty is largely an illusion in the egg industry. A relatively small group of massive producers supply an outsized share of what ends up on store shelves under dozens of different names. And when one facility fails, the damage doesn't stay contained to a single label. Here's the practical takeaway. Every carton has a plant code and a Julian date printed on the side, usually starting with a letter followed by 4 digits, then a 3-digit number representing the day of the year it was packed. When a recall happens, that code is exactly how the FDA identifies affected batches. And it's the fastest way for you to check your own fridge. Cross-referencing that code against active FDA recall listings takes less than a minute, and it's the single most reliable way to know whether what you bought is safe. The uncomfortable truth is that no amount of brand switching fully protects you, because the names on the label rarely reflect the true source behind the eggs. What protects you is awareness, checking codes when recalls hit the news, and understanding that this industry is far more concentrated than most consumers ever realize. If this investigation opened your eyes to something you didn't know about your own kitchen, that's exactly why stories like this matter. Subscribe if you want more deep dives that separate what companies want you to believe from what the actual government records show. And let us know in the comments which of these 7 cases surprised you the most.